You and me alone.
Starscream, exploring the cunning and sadistic Decepticon. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Terry and this is Marvelous Videos. Everyone has at some point watched the Transformers, whether it be the TV series or the movies. While the robots and all their powers and transformations are definitely fascinating, some of the characters have etched themselves in the minds of generations of fans. This video is about arguably the most evil and sadistic Decepticon to ever grace or darken the franchise. Any guesses? It's none other than Starscream. Starscream has featured in almost all the Transformers properties and is a widely appreciated character. It's because of his popularity that we'll focus only on the movies and animated series, because the character has such extensive lore that it'd become a 3-hour-long video if we went into the nitty-gritty.
Forgive me, Starscream. You have done an excellent job.
However, if you want the complete detailed lore of the evil and cunning Starscream, comment down below. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Now let's begin. Starscream, the center of attention in the movies. As promised, we're going to explore all of Starscream's movie appearances to give you an idea of just how important this character really was in all of the happenings of the movie universe. Writer Alex Kurtzman declared that Starscream wouldn't veer from his cunning origins as he strives to dethrone Megatron and frequently spars with him during the live-action movie's filming. Starscream has made numerous appearances in the live-action film world, from the original Transformers to the time of his demise in Dark of the Moon. After that, he made cameo appearances, either briefly in a supporting role or interestingly, as just a severed head. It's unknown if Starscream will make yet another appearance in Transformers Rise of the Beasts in 2023, but we can hope, right? In the first film, Transformers, released in 2007, when undercover agent Frenzy revealed that the Allspark and Megatron had been discovered behind Hoover Dam, Starscream was waiting at a US airbase in the disguise of an F-22 Raptor. Starscream gave the order for the remaining Decepticons to prepare for battle, even though he'd always dreaded this day would arrive. Starscream, who arrived first, assaulted the hydroelectric facility that was connected to the dam in order to disrupt Sector 7's operations and hasten Megatron's thawing. Megatron was immediately released from his frozen bonds by Frenzy's sabotage, and he left the prison. Starscream was ready for him when he arrived, and he reaffirmed his commitment to Megatron. When Megatron demanded to know what had happened to the Allspark, his second-in-command informed him that humanity now owned it. Megatron was enraged and ordered an attack on them after berating his subordinate for yet another oversight.
You fail me yet again, Starscream. Get them!
Starscream deceived Captain Lennox's team during the attack on Mission City by pretending to be an Air Force member providing cover while in jet form. Ironhide quickly realized who the fighter was, but it was too late as he launched a strike that rendered Bumblebee helpless.
You alright? Please get up. Bumblebee, get up!
Starscream flew down to block Sam's path as he raced with the Allspark. Ironhide and Ratchet then attacked him. Instead of protecting the Allspark from the now vulnerable Sam, Starscream took to the skies once more after fighting them without much effort but still defeating them. Starscream sat on surrounding buildings and shot down an Army Black Hawk chopper when it attempted to assist Sam in escaping the Allspark while Megatron tried to take the Allspark from him. Starscream eventually disguised himself as real US Air Force F-22 Raptors showed up. He stunned the human pilots by transforming in midair and destroyed 3 of the Raptors before he was shot while pretending to be a member of their squadron. In the last few seconds of the fight between Optimus Prime and Megatron, he seemingly disappeared after resuming his disguise. The majority of the Decepticons were vanquished and their corpses were thrown into the ocean's depths. Starscream ultimately escaped into space from Earth. Following Megatron's demise and the destruction of the Allspark, Starscream took over as Decepticon commander on Earth. He was tempted to take his revenge on the humans, but he decided against it because he might be the last functioning Decepticon left in the world and fled Mission City to retrieve the severely injured Barricade. As soon as he was able, Starscream gave him orders to continue his surveillance of the Autobots before leaving to fetch Frenzy from Hoover Dam. Thus, he started rebuilding the Decepticon forces, but was unsuccessful. When Megatron returns in the second movie, he confronts Starscream on board the Nemesis wreckage and accuses him of abandoning him to perish.
Starscream, I'm home.
Lord Megatron,
Starscream defended his actions by claiming that Megatron was not present and that the Fallen had ordered the creation of a new army. Starscream made a poor choice in words since Megatron shoved him into a hatchling sack and told him the plain truth. Megatron is the only being with supreme authority, even in death. He then tells Megatron that he and the Fallen created a new Decepticon army, but warns him that without enough energon to feed them, the hatchlings that would become the new army will keep perishing. However, after observing the distress of the hatchlings, Megatron asked the Fallen, whom Starscream had maintained on life support, for advice on another source of energon since the Allspark had been destroyed. The Fallen stated that there was a second supply and that the youngster who had murdered Megatron had the key to obtaining it. However, in order to ensure his safety, the Fallen gave the order to assassinate Optimus Prime, the final member of the dynasty of Primes. It would be easy to catch Sam because Optimus would come to defend him. Starscream helped Grindor abduct Sam Witwicky by tearing up the vehicle, and then he stood by while Megatron and Scalpel threatened to dissect him for the knowledge of the energon source he held in his memory from the Allspark. He then watched Megatron preparing to remove Sam's brain in a factory close to Sam's college. Later, Optimus Prime and Bumblebee showed up and Starscream fought alongside Megatron, Grindor and Optimus Prime in the wilderness, where Optimus ended up ripping Grindor's skull in half and amputating Starscream's right arm. Megatron, however, was able to dispatch Optimus by stabbing him in the back and ejecting his spark. The Autobots showed up there to save Sam as Megatron and Starscream flee. Starscream receives even more criticism from Megatron for failing to capture the human whom he referred to as an insect. Starscream then alerted Megatron about the Nest soldiers and Autobots' plan to revive Optimus using the Matrix of Leadership during the war in Egypt.
Master, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but the soldiers brought the body of...
Then Starscream commands the attack on the Autobots and Nest as Rampage pursues Sam and Michaela while the Decepticons search for them. Starscream counsels his leader Megatron to flee after he was severely crippled and the Fallen were destroyed by Supermode Optimus Prime. Starscream chased after a Cybertronian energy signature and witnessed a form fall into the water near a pierside amusement park. The figure was Space Case, who assaulted Starscream right away after feeling like he was being pushed around by punching him into a Ferris wheel. Starscream sprang up and fired at Space Case, but he soon recognized who the rogue Decepticon was. Starscream started to heap on the compliments, knowing that Space Case was easily duped and hoped to enlist him as the first member of his new army. They left the wrecked pier as the sun set, Starscream having finally found a comrade who would listen to his opinions for once. He had promised Space Case the Earth as a reward in exchange for their dedication. He then appears in Transformers Dark of the Moon alongside Megatron, who has a special plan in place to put the Decepticons on top. Starscream makes his initial appearance in Africa with Megatron, Soundwave and Laserbeak in the third movie. He brags about how weak Megatron is, which enrages his boss. Near the end of the Cybertronian War, Megatron and Sentinel Prime devised a plan, and Megatron, an exile residing in Africa, put it into motion. At the Decepticon High Command in Africa, where Starscream later meets Megatron, Soundwave and Laserbeak, they learn that the Autobots had indeed found the Ark as anticipated. Sentinel Prime uses the space bridge to call a Decepticon army to Earth in Washington, D.C. Finally, Starscream acknowledges the genius of Megatron's plan and commends his superior. Megatron and Starscream both see Sentinel Prime bring an army of Decepticons to Earth from the moon after Sentinel Prime betrays the Autobots. Later, after the Autobots have been banished by the American government, he destroys their spacecraft, the Xantium. Megatron, Starscream and Sentinel watch as a sizable Decepticon army invades and attacks Chicago after it's assumed that the Autobots have been killed. Starscream then stumbles across Sam again during the battle in Chicago and makes fun of him. Sam removes Starscream's right eye with a grappling glove that Q Wheeljack gave him. Then, in a fit of rage, Starscream launches Sam through the air and through a nearby building's window. When the Nest soldiers arrived, Lennox led them in an assault on Starscream. Finally, Sam stabs him in the other eye, rendering him blind, and blows his head up using the boomstick that Q Wheeljack gave him. However, even though he dies, it's not the last time Starscream appears on the big screen. As seen in Transformers Age of Extinction, the CIA unit Cemetery Wind designated Starscream as dead 5 years after the Battle of Chicago. Further, in the movie Transformers The Last Night, it was revealed that Starscream's head had at some time been retrieved from the rubble of Chicago and had traveled all the way to Buffalo, New York. It wound up at Cade Yeager's salvage yard among the other things that Day Trader sold to the Autobots. The Autobots and Cade were not amused. Starscream's head was discovered after the Decepticons' raid on the junkyard, and Megatron lamented that his betraying buddy couldn't see the conflict come to a conclusion. Then, when he traveled to Quintessa, Megatron abandoned the head in the junkyard. Unfortunately, the movie version of Starscream doesn't compare to the cunning one we've often seen in the comics and television shows. His only claim to fame in the movies was that he was yet another brutish Decepticon for the Autobots to battle. His deceitfulness and goals were relegated to tie-in comics alone, so movie Starscream was portrayed as Megatron's obedient slave. While it's amusing to watch Megatron use Starscream as a chew toy, it's a poor illustration of why the robot characters in the movies are so liked, and it's a result of the film's lack of attention to them.
Nobody turns his back on me!
Starscream is insanely intimidating in the animated universe. The allure of Starscream's deceit and cunning have inspired the creation of several characters in the franchise, most of whom share his desire to be the leader of the Decepticons.
Starscream, the pride of the Cybertron War Academy! Never! Do you hear me? Never!
Starscream wants to depose Megatron as the head of the Decepticons. Although he has occasionally had the Decepticons under control, he frequently loses. Starscream is far cleverer than the usual Decepticon and is merciless, brutal and bloodthirsty, yet he is also unlikely to act immediately on these desires without first establishing circumstances that will facilitate his ascent. He views himself as far superior to the other Decepticons, and he despises Megatron for his outmoded military methods.
Well, welcome aboard, Shockwave. It looks like we've got a planet to reclaim.
Starscream thinks that in order to overcome the Autobots, the Decepticons should rely more on cunning and speed than on force. When given a chance to be the leader, he frequently does worse than Megatron. Although Starscream is usually ignored as a threat by Megatron, writers propose that this is due to both cautionary observation and grudging respect for Starscream's cunning nature.
As my subordinate.
Thank you for sparing me, Megatron.
Others claim that Megatron appreciates Starscream's cunning character. Without a challenge to his authority, Megatron fears he would grow complacent and weak, or even that he finds his misdeeds funny. However, Starscream frequently wears down Megatron's patience swiftly, resulting in severe but infrequent verbal or physical altercations between the two. As a result, Megatron has occasionally come dangerously near to killing Starscream. He has appeared in many generations of Transformers animated series, and each appearance is more cunning and evil than the previous one.
Destroy the entire Earth!
Very good, Doctor. You understand perfectly.
In Generation 1, prior to the Autobot vs. Decepticon War's resumption, during the Golden Age of Cybertron, Starscream worked as a scientist and explorer along the future Autobot Skyfire. Starscream returned to Cybertron when Skyfire vanished while the two were researching an ancient Earth, and quickly gave up his scientific endeavors, joining Megatron's Decepticon army as the Civil War broke out. The Cybertron War Academy, which is described in the episode A Prime Problem, was where Starscream studied. In a few episodes, Starscream uses his expertise from his previous profession of a scientist. For instance, when he and many other Decepticons were briefly transported to medieval England in a Decepticon raider in King Arthur's court, when the weapons of the Transformers failed to function, Starscream understood how to make gunpowder as a substitute for himself and the others, using the materials at hand. He makes an attempt to depose Megatron as the head of the Decepticons in Starscream's Brigade, which at the time was merely his most recent of many attempts. Starscream discovers the wreckage of a few World War II military vehicles after being beaten and banished to Guadalcanal, and this finds him motivated to raise his own army. He uses the space bridge to get to Cybertron while evading Shockwave and the Guardians. He infiltrates the Decepticon detention facility and takes the 5 personality elements from renegade Decepticons. He then installs these components into 5 destroyed military vehicles to create the Combaticons. 4 Transformers are then taken prisoner by Starscream, the Combaticons and Bruticus.
This is my army, Megatron. The Combaticons.
Megatron sends Devastator to battle Bruticus after rallying his troops against Starscream and the Combaticons, but Devastator loses. Megatron tries to flee, but Starscream commands Bruticus to seize him and keep him in custody while he brags and belittles him. The Stunticons show up during this time, unite into Menasor, and overthrow Bruticus. The Combaticons and Starscream are then sent off to a far-off asteroid by order of Megatron to Astrotrain. In The Revenge of Bruticus, the following episode, the Combaticons accuse Starscream of being the reason behind their punishment. After he deserts them, they jail him on Cybertron and devise a terrible scheme to exact revenge on Megatron by using Cybertron's controls to draw Earth toward the sun.
They locked us in here, and they forced me to threaten you, Megatron. Believe me.
Starscream is finally reinstated in the Decepticon ranks after demonstrating his value by aiding Megatron and Optimus Prime in stopping the insane Bruticus. In Generation 1, we also see Starscream appear as a vengeful ghost after his defeat at the hands of Megatron, who had turned into the mighty Galvatron. He meets up with his old friend Octane in the Decepticon crypt in Starscream's Ghost, and the two plan to give Galvatron to Rodimus Prime, the new leader of the Autobots. Starscream takes over Cyclonus' body and deceives Galvatron into allowing the Autobots to seize control of him. When Galvatron sees that Starscream's ghost is controlling his second-in-command, he flees and then shoots Cyclonus. The enraged spirit easily makes off, and in the subsequent episode Ghost in the Machine, it makes another appearance. He first appears in the episode as Scourge, and triggers the Unicron head.
No! Don't shoot!
Then, by stealing the transformation cog from Trypticon and the eyes from Metroplex, Starscream strikes a bargain with Unicron to restore the latter's body and sight. Unicron's head is then connected to Cybertron. Starscream manages to fulfill a bunch of his promises, but his true nature takes over and he double-crosses Unicron. Shortly after, Starscream and Unicron's heads are launched into space by an explosion that the Autobots set off. As Starscream loses control, the Decepticons attack him with all of their firepower, hurting him and sending him further into space. In G1, Starscream is never seen again. Doug Parker plays the voice of Starscream in the Beast Wars Transformers sequel. He seizes possession of Waspinator's body during a lightning storm in the episode Possession. He is known to the Predacons as Decepticon Air Commander Starscream. Starscream swears loyalty to the Predacon Commander Megatron and states that he was killed defending Galvatron from Unicron in combat. He was actually destroyed by Galvatron, and now he schemes to overthrow Megatron and take over the Predacons. In exchange for the safety of Optimus Primal and Dinobot, he orders the Maximals to attack the Predacon base after seizing the Maximal base. Optimus Primal and Black Arachnia work together to vanquish him, releasing Waspinator's corpse and sending Starscream's spirit plummeting back into space. Starscream makes a brief appearance in The Agenda while imprisoned in stasis on the Ark. His next appearance was as one of Galvatron's most devoted servants in the Japanese-only animated series Beast Wars 2. Starscream is as ambitious and lethal as the previous Decepticon Air Commander. He compensates for his diminutive size with unparalleled speed and agility. He aspires to take over the universe one day and unseat Galvatron as the Predacon Emperor of Devastation. He frequently giggles and makes unsteady gestures, and he is also a little effeminate. Starscream can fly at an extremely high speed and change into a stealth fighter. He may use the formation scream when in fighter mode to join forces with his dependable partner BB to become a potent air fighter. His Screamwinder missiles, which are powerful enough to annihilate most opponents, is his go-to assault when in robot mode.
What's so funny, Starscream?
I'm sorry, sir.
He also appeared extensively in the Unicron trilogy. In contrast to his G1 counterpart, Starscream is portrayed in Transformers Armada as a young, conceited warrior who yearns for Megatron's approval and respect. However, Starscream soon finds himself in a confusing position where he starts to hate both himself and his commander for the abuse meted out to him, as well as being sickened with his leader's lack of regard for his troops. Along with Demolishor and Cyclonus, he first arrived on Earth as a part of Megatron's quest to harness the power of the Minicons. Starscream was tricked by Sideways into a fight with Megatron, which he lost, as a result of his displeasure over being the last of the Decepticons to obtain his partner Minicon. He later sided with the Autobots because of his animosity towards Megatron in order to finally overthrow his old boss. He made a remarkably deep bond with the human Alexis when he was with the Autobots. Starscream finally fell prey to Thrust's manipulations, rejoining the Decepticons despite his promise to annihilate Megatron. Starscream was one of the 5 Cybertronians that acquired a power boost from the Minicons during the Unicron battles, giving him a new blue coloration that makes him resemble Thundercracker. Starscream challenged his master to a duel and enabled him to stab him in the chest with the Starsaber when Megatron, now referring to himself as Galvatron, refused to accept Unicron's existence and the potential threat he carried. Following a final farewell with Galvatron, the Seeker removed the Starsaber from his chest, revealing his spark, and shot directly towards Unicron. However, the Chaosbringer returned fire with a lightning strike that killed Starscream instantly. Galvatron was finally persuaded of Unicron's existence by Starscream's death, and he partnered the Decepticons with the Autobots to eliminate the danger. 10 years later, in Energon, Alpha Q uses Starscream as his personal executioner by reviving him and erasing all memories of his prior existence. Starscream is later captured by Megatron, who uses his newfound relationship with Unicron to brainwash him into becoming his obedient second-in-command. Later in the series, he is exposed to a pool of super energon, which renders him in his G1 hues and makes his armor resistant to laser fire. Galvatron enters an energon sun to free himself from Unicron's control in the last episode, and Starscream and Mirage pursue him. In Cybertron, Starscream made a second appearance as a nastier, more brutal figure. He seems to be loyal to Megatron as he was in Energon, while covertly planning a takeover of the Decepticons against Megatron. As a result, the group begins to disintegrate. Starscream finds a collection of extinct Decepticons, including two by the names of Thunderblast and Lugnut. He also enlists the help of the neutral Transformers Sideways and Soundwave. After multiple meetings, Starscream and Galvatron engage in one final battle that results in the translocation of Sideways, Soundwave and Starscream into another dimension.
Report. Energy reading off the scale, my liege. Shall I fire on the Autobot?
Voiced by Tom Kenny, Starscream makes an appearance in the 2007 animated series. In terms of appearance, character and aspirations, he is similar to his Generation 1 counterpart and turns into a futuristic Harrier aircraft. In both flight modes, he flies quickly and uses his signature null rays, which are actually just strong lasers. He displays occasional incompetence and is inadvertently funny in this iteration. The fact that this manifestation flew about in a horribly damaged Nemesis for 50 years on his own to locate the Allspark's energy signature demonstrates his unwavering dedication to his goal. Starscream is a great warrior despite a little cowardice, as evidenced by the fact that he nearly defeated every Autobot during a conflict for the Allspark.
The source of the treasonous communication signal.
He is more narcissistic than most versions of the character, frequently and with utter delight complimenting and praising his plans and appearance. In the opening episode of Season 1, he betrays Megatron and tries to murder him. Soon after, Megatron learns about it, and in the season finale, Starscream will be killed. The Allspark is destroyed in Season 2 of the show after a conflict between Autobots and Decepticons, but Starscream is brought back to life by a piece of the Allspark embedded in his forehead. Throughout this season of the show, Starscream perseveres and makes multiple efforts to kill Megatron, both before and after the Decepticon leader destroys him.
We believed you could take over as leader of the Decepticons. You couldn't lead a parade.
Starscream and Megatron team up in Season 3 to take control of Cybertron and exterminate the Autobots. In the season finale, Starscream reclaims his own form and attempts to betray Megatron once more, but is stopped by Lugnut. Prowl and Jazz reconstruct the Allspark using all of the shards already in existence, and Starscream is destroyed when his fragment is lost.
And what can I do to assist you, Master?
He further makes extensive appearances all throughout the Aligned series, including Transformers Prime and Transformers Robots in Disguise. The character is portrayed in Prime as being much darker, continuously planning his ascent to the position of Decepticon leader, and ruthlessly eliminating Autobots as shown when he kills Cliffjumper in the first episode of the show.
To make again! No, Master! No!
He has shown disdain for Decepticons who don't select an alternative flying mode like Knockout. He may appear weak, yet he is one of the deadliest Decepticons in history thanks to his cunning tactics and deadly weapons like his missiles. He continues to make plans and moves to dethrone Megatron. Starscream in the animated universe was truly something. He added a whole lot of excitement and depth to the storylines, along with being an antagonist to the main antagonist, Megatron himself.
But they say, humans, always the weak link.
What makes him one of the deadliest Decepticons? Starscream is just as capable, strong, and deserving of being in charge as Megatron. At least he believes that. Starscream operates on three tenets: lying, manipulation, and deception. He is jealous and power-hungry, and if all else fails, a little sabotage is always a good idea. Bots with common sense avoid turning their backs on Starscream for fear that it might be the day he finally chooses to stick the knife in.
Daddy, Starscream!
It's believed that Starscream was capable of flying up to Mach 2 or higher because of his ability to change into a jet that resembles a General Dynamics F-16 Falcon. He had a missile launcher on each of his robot arms, and it's safe to presume that he reloaded them after each use. He had razor-sharp claws that had been demonstrated to pierce heavy armor, such as when he destroyed Cliffjumper. He bent his index finger to launch the missiles. Starscream has demonstrated some military strategy skills, but not to the same degree as Megatron. He could also extend energon blasters from his forearms, which which were normally where his hands were, and retract his hands as well. In Cybertronian terms, he lacked considerable physical strength, yet he was incredibly quick and agile. Starscream was vicious, crafty, egotistical, ruthless, and most of all conceited. He occasionally acted traitoriously, as was previously stated. He frequently acted in order to enrich himself personally. His resourcefulness and cunning were his best weapons. In fact, after being rejected by Megatron, his old master, Starscream held a bitter grudge against him for having to endure great hardship at the hands of Megatron. He developed a hunger for power and wanted to utilize Megatron's invention, the Dark Star Saber, to avenge Megatron by arming himself with the 7 weaponized Minicons. However, it's seen that he has a feeling of honor as well, since he always made sure to pay back his debts. He could fly around very quickly and use weaponry that could destroy big buildings to escape Ratchet's magnetic pull. Unfortunately, he had a huge ego and a propensity to give long, obnoxious speeches when he ought to simply get on with it and fight, which negated all of his skills. He has frequently lost out on great opportunities due to his penchant for bombast. Sadly, it appears that he doesn't learn from his errors. Most of his schemes ultimately fail because of his cowardly attitude and his inability to motivate the Decepticon forces. But to be honest, he is his own worst enemy. He frequently overlooks crucial information and potential repercussions due to his big ego, backstabbing tendencies, and grandiose schemes, which generally come back to bite him.
The Apex armor.
When he obtained the Apex armor, his ego let Dreadwing and Optimus get the best of him. Despite the fact that his treacherousness made him unpredictable, he was also terribly insecure. Considering how vast Starscream's lore is, and we haven't even discussed the comic books at all, it's clear that Starscream was and continues to be important in the franchise. He quickly became an immensely popular and entertaining character as soon as he was introduced. We think it would definitely be a nice surprise if the character is added as part of the upcoming movie next year in some form or other. Do you think it's time Starscream made a proper comeback in the Transformers cinematic universe? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.